Good afternoon, readers. It's Tilly here from Tilly's Shelf, and welcome to the final day of the Victorian Poetry Challenge that I've been doing on this channel. So this Victorian poetry thing was in honour of Victober, which is Victorian October, and that was a read-along that is hosted by Kate Howe, Katie at Books and Things, and Lucy the Reader, and there have been loads of really interesting videos and readings and things going on over the course of this month, of which this has been a very tiny part. But I found it really interesting and quite enjoyable to be introduced to a range of new Victorian poets and I guess get that kind of overview of different poetical styles and approaches over the course of that period. So our final poet today is a relatively obscure one. His name is Gerard Manley Hopkins, and he lived from 1844 to 1849, but as far as I can understand, his poetry wasn't published until 1918, when a friend of his named Robert Bridges, who was at that time the Poet Laureate, decided to publish some of his work. So Gerard Manley Hopkins himself died quite young. He died of typhoid, and didn't reach the opportunity of having his works published. So although these are Victorian poems and Victorian sentiments being expressed, they weren't poems that were familiar to other people in the Victorian era, unlike the majority of other poems that we've read. So the first short poem by this poet is Spring and Fall to a Young Child, which I shall read for you now. Margaret, are you grieving over Golden Grove unleaving, leaves, like the things of man, you with your fresh thoughts care for, can you? Ah, as the heart grows older, it will come to such sights colder, by and by, nor spare a sigh, though worlds of wanwood leaf-meal lie. And yet you will weep, and know why. Now no matter, child, the name, sorrow's springs are the same, nor mouth had, nor mind expressed, what heart heard of, ghost guessed, it is the blight man was born for. It is Margaret you mourn for. And that's the end. So the basic idea in this poem is that it's addressed to a young child who is sad at the emergence of autumn. So it's a very suitable poem for October, when outside the window the leaves are turning colour. We've got some beautiful orange trees outside and some that are kind of like, one that I can see now is green and yellow, kind of like a blend. And this idea is that Margaret is so sad about the fall of nature and the deterioration of beauty over the course of autumn that she is moved to tears. But the older poet is telling her that in future she won't mind, she won't notice. She will come to such sights colder by and by, nor spare a sigh, though worlds of wanwood leaf-meal lie. Like, no matter how complete the devastation of autumn, she will be unmoved by it, but she'll still be grieving and still be mourning. And it's this kind of like slightly spooky idea that she'll be mourning for herself and grieving for herself, almost as though the loss of age and the gain in age and loss of innocence and loss of youth is the thing that she'll be grieving for. So in the introduction to this poem, it says, this poem maps the child's life and growth away from the first fresh perceptions of nature in accordance with the Judeo-Christian concept of humanity's innate sinfulness. So that as Margaret gets older, her awareness of the sins of humans is the thing that she'll be grieving for, rather than the state of the natural world. I think it's quite a weird poem and quite a weird concept. Just an odd conceptualization of the loss of innocence. And I guess that's true. Like, children can have like that very intense response to like one of my cousins was talking to me the other day. She's got like a 2 or 3 year old child, and she was talking about how he gets really upset when things are hurt in like TV cartoons and stuff, or gets really upset that like a car breaks down in a cartoon or something, because he really feels that he's got this really intense empathy for those things. And I was thinking that reflects as well into Jude the Obscure by Hardy, which I'm reading at the moment, where Jude as a young boy has this really intense sympathy for the birds on the farm, and he can't bear to see them go hungry. And this idea of children being intensely empathetic and having these intense feelings for others. And the poet is quite cynically arguing that as you grow older, you will become less empathetic and more self-centered, but increasingly aware of the things the things that are sad within your own life, I suppose, and I guess increasingly experiencing your own griefs and sadnesses, as opposed to just seeing them reflected in other contexts. Yeah, I don't know. The weird thing about this poem is he uses a lot of little accents. So I was trying to read it as though those accents were deliberately put in place to influence the stresses. I don't know whether you can see. Margaret, are you grieving? And like this word will is in italics and has an accent. And I'm not sure why he put those accents on. I'm assuming it's to do with the stress. But yeah, don't Margaret, are you grieving? It just doesn't really read very well. It's a 15-line poem, so it's not a sonnet. I don't know what specific form it is. It does have a rhyme pattern, so it goes A A B B C C D D D D D E E F F G G, if that makes sense. So in the middle, there are 3 lines that all rhyme together. And that middle point covers the transition between her no longer grieving for the leaves, but starting to grieve for other things. So it's by and by, nor spare a sigh, though worlds of one-wood leaf mill lie, and yet you will weep and know why. So it kind of like ties that phrasing together, I suppose, by joining by having that rhyming scheme. Yeah, I feel like it's a bit obscure in a way. So I'd be interested to know what you think of it, and if you maybe appreciated it more than I did. It's a very mournful poem, I suppose, and very quite bleak and pessimistic. It's definitely not my favourite poem of the last few weeks. I would say, I guess it's the last day, so we can do a little overview. What has been my favourite poem? I think Crossing the Bar by Tennyson was just far and away the best phrase, the best use of metaphor, the best use of technique, and the best encapsulating of a theme. Probably the most fun was Robert Browning, My Last Duchess, because it was really like a juicy story, I suppose. I guess the other thing to think about, which was the most interesting and unusual. I'm not sure which one would be. The most quintessentially Victorian, I think, would be the Adelaide and Proctor sentimental poem. But yeah, overall, I found it quite interesting to dabble in so many different Victorian poems. I would be interested to read more of the poems in this book, and definitely I think I should challenge myself to read some more of the longer poems, because having read the one by Adelaide and Proctor, Philip and Mildred, it had a very different style and a very different approach. So I think it would be worthwhile, but I'm struggling to read much at all at the moment, so just trying to drag myself backwards through a very long poem doesn't seem like a very good idea. If you've had any particular favourites from the last few weeks, or if you've had any particular favourite Victorian poems overall, I would be interested to hear them, and please let me know. Oh yeah, I think the most interesting and obscure one would have been the Christina Rossetti in an Artist's Studio, where she talked about like the female perspective on the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood. I thought that was a unique and very intriguing poem. I'll just read Spring and Fall to a Young Child again for you, and let me know what you think about it in the comments. Margaret, are you grieving over Golden Grove unleaving? Leaves, like the things of man, you with your fresh thoughts care for, can you? Ah, as the heart grows older, it will come to such sights colder, by and by, nor spare a sigh, though worlds of one wood leaf mill lie. And yet you will weep, and know why. Now no matter, child, the name, sorrow springs are the same, nor mouth had, no, nor mind expressed, what heart heard of, ghost guessed, it is the blight you were born for, it is Margaret you mourn for. it's the blight man was born for. That's quite, yeah, again, pessimistic, like very fated feeling. There is a good kind of sense of rhythm in this poem. So there's a whole chunk. The first two lines are a question. Margaret, are you grieving over Golden Grove on leaving? And then there's a question mark. But then there is no full stop. There's no pause in the sentence until you get to, and yet you will weep and know why. And that kind of gives it a really nice flow through the first section, the first part of the poet's response to Margaret's grief. And then the second half is more broken up into little phrases. Now no matter child the name, sorrow springs are the same, full stop. Nor mouth had, no, nor mind expressed what heart heard, ghost guessed, stop. And that kind of, yeah, I don't know, because it flowed so well in the first half, that kind of breaking it up, it has a very dictatorial, like, it's not in doubt of itself, it's very certain, like, you will mourn for these specific reasons. So yeah, so I guess that's the effect of that. Yeah, I don't know, it's a curious little poem. Let me know what you think of it. All right, I will speak to you probably next week for Bookish Breakfast, and probably, yeah, not so many videos for a while, now that I'm not going to be self-isolating at home. Anyway, take care everyone, and I'll speak to you soon.